Can you believe it? We are 66 days away from the start of the Duke football season. That's right. In just 66 short days, the Duke Blue Devils will play a football game led by new head coach Mike Elko. Who are going to be the 5 most impactful players on this year's Duke football team? We're going to discuss that. We'll break it down on today's edition of Locked On Blue Devils.
Vital. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. It's so exciting to have you here with us on our show today. Our show is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Follow our show on Twitter at LO_Blue Devils. You can follow me on Twitter at _JJ_Jackson_. If you would, be sure to subscribe and follow Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever you get your podcasts. You'll get the latest episode of this podcast as soon as it comes out each day. Be sure to also subscribe to our Locked On Blue Devils YouTube page to watch the show daily. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Devils your first listen every single day. All right, as we move forward here on today's edition of Locked On Blue Devils, allow me to welcome in my good buddy. It's Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. Back with me for another day this week. We're talking all things Duke football. And Josh, I said it a moment ago in our tease, we are 66 days away from the start of the Duke football season. It's right around the corner. In 66 short days, Mike Elko will be coaching the game for the Blue Devils.
Yeah, man, forget this basketball stuff. It's football season, man.
That's right.
We're ready. We are ready. And I tell you what, this is not what this podcast is about, but man, there's been some movement happening on the recruiting trail for Duke. And if you've been following anything on social media, you're seeing several guys make their commitments to Duke. And so, yeah, man, it's got me ready to go. Ready for that season opener, Temple, that Friday night. I mean, I can sense it already. So looking forward to talking football for sure.
Yeah, let's do it. So we're going to go with our top 5 most impactful players for this upcoming season. Obviously, this is a projection, a prediction, and as the year plays out, it's kind of fun to see what this could look like. It's 100% off-season chatter. Like, we'll let you know that's what we're going for here. 66 days away. We haven't even jumped in to fall camp. Quarterbacks are a big question for a lot of people with this Duke football team. But when you start to look at kind of the most impactful players, it's a really interesting conversation because there is a new head coach coming in, Josh, right? And so he is kind of working with, talking about he being Mike Elko, players who have already been on the roster and been established in a lot of ways in that scenario. And these kind of most impactful players for this season are going to help set the blueprint, pun intended, for what Duke football is going to look like in the years to come.
Yeah, and this is very important. It's very important because you do have your guys that were here under the previous coaching staff that are making these adjustments that we've seen play, for a year or 2 or 3 now. And then you have, your recruits that are coming in as true freshmen. And then you have the transfer portal, and you add all those things together. And it's going to be very interesting to see what Duke football looks like. And so, 5 impactful players. I'm sure that we will have some crossover a little bit because I think there's a couple of obvious picks on this. But I'm looking forward. Like you said, it's off-season talk, man. Who knows? We might be way off on a couple of these. But I feel like, it'll be interesting to see who you think the top 5 most impactful players will be. And who I think they'll be, and we'll see if it comes out in the wash in the fall.
Hit us up on Twitter. Let us know what you think the 5 most impactful players are in the YouTube comments. I know a lot of people like sending their messages that way, and it's so great for debate. That's what we're looking for this time of year is kind of debate amongst the Duke football community. And Josh, when I sent you this topic and this prompt, I really wanted to leave it up to interpretation more than anything. So I kind of like sort of the open, what do you view to be impactful versus how do I think it be? So let's jump right into it. Let's get started with you, my friend. Yeah. Number 5, top 5 most impactful players for Duke football in 2022. Get us started with number 5.
Yeah, so my 5th. So we're going opposite, So the number 1 is going to be the most impactful, right? So we're at 5 here. I'm going Dequan Johnson at number 5. So he is a returning member of our secondary, played safety for Duke. If you know anything about Duke football from last year moving into this year, we lost 11 members of our secondary. And he, along with Jalen Stinson, are the only really 2. Stinson was technically the only starter that's coming back. Dequan Johnson technically was not a starter, and he had a very productive season last year, over 60 tackles. He filled up the stat sheet. I believe if our secondary is going to be what it can be, or even like middle of the road, it's going to have to be because guys like Dequan Johnson take that next step and take that leap from where he was last year to where he can be this year. So my number 5 guy, I think his nickname is Dequan Money. It's Money Johnson. And so he's my number 5 most impactful player heading into the fall.
The secondary is the biggest piece in all of this. Like, you've got to make sure that your secondary is in a good spot. And yeah, I love the Dequan Johnson pick there. Money indeed. That's a money pick there for most impactful. And you got to make sure your defensive back end is shored up and that sort of thing. All right, so I took a very literal approach here with the top 5 most impactful players in this one. And I know this player was not on your list. I feel pretty certain in that. I might get flack right out of the gates and this sort of thing. But, Josh, I'm just going to go for it, okay? And top 5 most impactful players for Duke going into the 2022 season, I'm giving some love to Charlie Hamm right here. Ooh. And here's why. If you want to win football games, you got to be able to put points on the board. And Charlie Hamm, the place kicker for Duke, going into his redshirt junior season, Atlanta, Georgia native, last year was a member of the preseason Lou Groza Award watch list. Coming back for another year, he's going to be on that list once again as one of the top kickers in all of college football. Really impressive throughout his Duke career. Throughout the season, every kicker is going to have some ups and downs, so to speak. But in terms of making impact, if Duke really wants to take the next, you got to put points on the board. And if the offense does stall a little bit, there's not number 21 in the backfield to hand the football off to this season in Matteo Durant. Right now, we've got question marks as to what the quarterback position could look like. That's why I said, you know what? I really do think Charlie Hamm will make an impact on this Duke football team, because if you're scoring points and the other team isn't, you're winning football games, and Charlie Hamm has an immediate impact in making that happen.
Yeah, I like the pick, and you're right, he's not on my list. I like the pick. First of all, I think Charlie's an awesome dude. Great guy. But secondly, there's something to be said about having a kicker that, let's use the 48-yard field goal. From 48 and in, you're like, we're cool. We're cool with that. And obviously Charlie's shown that he can hit them over 50 yards as well. But like, if we can have a kicker that we're like 45 to 48 and in, man, it's basically money, and we're gonna take the points. Like, I guess here's the way to look at it. In years past, how many times have we said, oh yeah, we're gonna go for it now on 4th and 5 because it's a 43-yard field goal, we don't trust our kicker.
Right.
Like, how many times have we add up? What if we did just taken the 3 points there? If we add that up, like, how many games could we have won? Yeah. How many points could we have scored? So I love the thought process of Charlie Hamm for sure.
Let's see how successful he could be this season, and that's kind of why I went with Charlie Hamm there at number 5. All right, 4 is coming up next. Let's take a quick break, and we'll get to the top 4 most impactful players for Duke football going in to 2022. Our show today is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number 1 source for all your betting needs and sports information. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL playoffs and Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today and use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, welcome back into Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson alongside Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. While we're here, tell me a little bit about the Section 17 podcast. 66 days away from football season, Josh. And if people aren't familiar with it, kind of give a rundown of the show.
Yeah, for sure. So we're in our third season of podcasting. It started, 4 of us got season tickets together 5 or 6 years ago. We decided we wanted to create a Twitter handle, and then that morphed into a podcast. And so now Facebook group, Twitter, and then we're on Section 17 podcast, wherever you find podcasts. Try to take a deep dive into Duke football. There are certain things we're good at, certain things we're probably not good at. Like recruiting is not really our thing, and so we lean on other people to help with recruiting. But we do try to talk Duke football. We love it. We are Duke football fans, and so we have a new episode. Knock on wood here, as long as our interview comes through, a new episode that we'll be releasing within the next couple of days. And so check it out anywhere you find podcasts. And let me say this for your Locked On crew as well, JJ. I don't know if you're aware of this. Spotify just recently began offering star ratings on podcasts.
Yeah.
So if you are listening to this on Spotify, make sure you give a 5-star rating for Locked On Blue Devils. And if you'd be so kind, head over to Section 17 podcast. Here's what I like about it. JJ, this is good. Spotify can track your listening history, and so they will not allow you to rate a podcast that you have not listened to for X amount of time. So, like, you actually have to listen to the podcast, in order to rate it. So when you get a 5-star rating on Spotify, it's from a legit listener. Yeah, man. So really get over there and take care of that on Spotify. Of course, also do it on YouTube. Subscribe and like. Same with Apple Podcasts, rate and review. But the new thing is Spotify now. You can get that 5-star rating. So
look, we love 5-star ratings however we can get them. I do love the Spotify angle because it's like, now I'm listening to the show. I know you're over there listening. For all of our other podcast platform listeners, you may feel like I've already listened to that once and now I have to listen to Spotify for my review to count. Whatever you do to make it happen, we appreciate it, and we're grateful for it. All right, let's jump right back into our conversation today of most impactful Duke football players for 2022. Hit me with number 4, Josh.
Okay, so my number 5 was Dequan Johnson. My number 4 is Eli Pankau. Eli Pankau. You say, Josh, what about Jalen Calhoun? Listen, Jalen Calhoun is my guy. All right, so number 1, I love Jalen. We have a personal friendship. His dad and we're really good. We love awesome. Jalen.
Yeah.
We're taking for granted that Jalen's going to be Jalen.
Right.
I'm taking for granted that Jalen's going to be Jalen. I believe if we have the offense that Kevin Johns wants us to have, then Eli Pankau is going to have a breakout season. Eli Pankau is athletic. Eli Pankau can play multiple positions as wideout. He can play in the slot. He can play on the outside. He's fast as lightning. Plus, he brings an energy, man. He brings an energy to this team when he's on the field and he's getting the football that I believe could be a big help during spring practice. We saw Eli back with some of the punt return and kick return guys as well. Some I don't know if that will be a role that he plays. But I believe if Kevin Johns is going to see us stretch the field a little bit more, and we're going to put more points on the board, and we're going to throw the ball down the field a little bit more, if that be the case, then the number 4 most impactful player going into the fall is going to be Eli Pankau. Now, you could argue Daryl Harding in the same vein. That's fine if you want to put both those guys there. But Jalen's going to be Jalen. Jalen's going to get his. If we're good, it's going to be because someone else is also having a great season. My money's on Eli Pankau.
I like that. I think Eli is a great selection, and you may hear from me on Eli here in just a little bit because I think that you're right. The offense will be better if more of those wide receivers can get involved and have an impact. A lot of Jake Bobo last season at the wide receiver position for Duke, and Jalen Calhoun making plays closer to the line of scrimmage, really important, helps an offense when you've got a playmaker that can do something like that, but just having different dynamics in your offensive passing game, I think is pretty important. I'm going to go number 4, DeWayne Carter, defensive lineman for the Blue Devils. Going into last season, had barely seen the field really at all, hadn't made much of an impact. And before the year ever even started, He's a representative that Coach Cutcliffe sent to ACC kickoff to speak in front of the media, the nation, to kind of send out the message of what Duke football was going to be. Mike Elko is a smart guy, and he understands that DeWayne Carter is one of the leaders on this football team. Where DeWayne goes, the team goes. Everyone wants to follow his lead. He is a lead by example type player, and he's not afraid to kind of hype the defensive up vocally or whatever it looks like in that regard. Way more productive on the defensive line this past season as he was 2 seasons prior. And I think once again, he's going to take another step forward. Just a big body in the ACC. It's a war of trenches in Division I Power 5 football, and that is something that Mike Elko really takes pride in, looking at his A&M units over the past few seasons. So I think DeWayne Carter will have a huge impact on this Duke football team.
Well, JJ, welcome to my headspace, man. We can actually – this is a perfect transition. My number 3 most impactful player for Duke football going into this season is DeWayne Carter. DeWayne Carter. So I agree with you 100%. He's the captain, man. He is the captain of this team. And as DeWayne goes, this team will go. I believe that it's important for him to transition into, this new Mike Elko defense, even though I know there may be some similarities in the structure of it. I believe the scheme's going to be different, and it's going to be a little bit maybe more complex on the defensive side of the football, which is a good thing, I believe. And once again, like you mentioned, his leadership skills. I mean, this guy who was trusted by the previous coaching staff to be a captain with really not much experience. And so DeWayne Carter, look, we've seen Coach Feely get these guys in the weight room. Hopefully we're going to see even more, bulk on some of these guys and get their speed where it needs to be. And let's face it, you mentioned it, man, the trenches is where you win and lose football games. And so I'd love to see the interior defensive line. I think of DeWayne Carter, his running mate kind of there, Aeneas Peebles. Those guys are good friends, and they kind of make up the starting interior defensive line. So I'm with you 100%. DeWayne Carter is my number 3 pick for most impactful football player going into the fall.
And this is how similar we're thinking alike, and knowing what's to come, I think we'll continue to have a very similar list. I had Eli Pankau at number 3, and I've always been someone who speaks more about the offense than the defense. In a lot of ways, I can understand the offense more than the defense. Are you scoring points or no? And I do think we talk about the offense that Kevin Johns is bringing over. Quarterback, the big looming question mark. But to truly be a dynamic offense, there's got to be a threat to go over the top and extend the back end of the secondary. I think Eli Pankau could be that guy. Going into last season, we had a lot of Eli Pankau discussions in the mix of Jake Bobo and Jalen Calhoun and that wide receiver group. And unfortunately, there just weren't as many football passes to go around for everybody to get their fair share. The way the offense was operating last year, being so run reliant as Duke was with Matteo Durant in the backfield. That's why Eli's bound to have a really good football season, and the versatility of having a deep threat is just so big for any offense.
Yeah, it's like we said earlier, and I won't belabor the point. It's going to be somebody. If we take the next step as an offense, which Kevin Johns, if you look at his track record, we're going to take the next step.
Yeah.
If we're going to take the next step, if it's not Eli Pankau, it's going to have to be Jontavius Robertson, or it's going to have to be, it's going to have to be Darryl Harding Jr. It's going to have to be somebody, because we're going to have to throw the ball more, and Jalen's not catching. They're not throwing to Jalen every time. So there's going to be more than just him. And so I love the pick, man. And once again, I'm an Eli Pankau fan, so I'm on board with you for sure.
All right, perfect. Well, let's get set for the top 2, the most impactful players here of Duke football going into the 2022 season in just a moment. Here on Locked On Blue Devils, my name is JJ Jackson, the host of the podcast, and I want to let you know about some other great podcasts out there on our Locked On Podcast Network. Get more on the ACC by making Locked On ACC your second listen every day. Host Candace Cooper and the local experts of Locked On take you across the ACC in 30 minutes. Make Locked On ACC your second listen here today. Also, be sure to check out Locked On Hornets. That's right. In the state of North Carolina, our NBA team, the Charlotte Hornets, a great podcast done every day. Walker Mel, Doug Branson do a great job talking all things Buzz City. a former Duke men's basketball player, Mark Williams, was drafted by the Hornets a week ago. So make sure you go and support Locked On Hornets. Moving forward here on today's edition of Locked On Blue Devils, again, JJ Jackson alongside Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. Number 2, who's number 2 for you on our 5 most impactful players?
All right, here we go. I'm gonna put money that we do not have the same 1 and 2.
Okay.
All right, put money on it.
Here we go.
Here we go. You ready?
Yes.
My number 2 most impactful player heading into the fall is a transfer. And it is former Iowa State defensive back and now current Duke Blue Devil, Dequan Young. His friends call him Speedy, and I like that.
Yeah.
So he started 2 seasons there at Iowa State. One of those 2 seasons, he was named to an all Big 12 team there in the secondary. We've spoken about it. I spoke about it at the beginning with Dequan Johnson, that the secondary scares me the most, obviously, on this team with losing 11 guys. And I believe that Young is going to come in and be a starter immediately. In fact, I don't feel like there's any way he's not. He can't. Yeah. He has to be a starter immediately. And so between he and Jalen Stinson and Dequan Johnson, that's going to make up, I guess you'd say that would make up the elder statesman there in the secondary. We also did land another transfer, Joyner, I believe. I got it pulled. Let's see here. I think I got it pulled. Darius Joyner. He's a safety. I don't know. I don't know what his impact will be. But Speedy Young, man, is my guy. By the way, kudos to the coaching staff for seeing the issues that we had in the secondary, for going heavily after that in the transfer portal. And so Dequan Young, Speedy Young, is my number 2 most impactful player heading into the fall.
Well, you're the big winner here, because you're right. It's not the same when we look at our list. But you talk about Johnson and Young in the back end of the secondary. That's got to improve for Duke to be successful. It's great to have someone like DeWayne Carter up front. Nice Peebles rushing the passer, making things happen there on the defensive side of the football. But if you don't have a back end of the secondary to help you out a little bit when the ball's thrown down the field, it doesn't matter what that defensive front looks like. And so with that being said, the Johnson and Young picks, I like them a whole lot. And I do think Young is going to have a big-time impact. For me, number 2, another wide receiver, I'm going to go Jalen Calhoun, and a really kind of, once again, literal understanding for me of impactful players this season. He is so good, Josh, at playing around the line of scrimmage. Some people might want to only call him a screen wide receiver or whatever you would like to for this upcoming season. But someone's got to be able to catch the football and move and pick up yards in some variety for you. And when you don't have the experience running back in the backfield like Matteo Durant, I think that's why Jalen Calhoun becomes more valuable. And then not to mention the quarterback changeover that you're currently experiencing, whether it's Jordan Moore or Riley Leonard that comes in. When you're throwing those passes a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage, it's only going to improve your confidence once you see the chains moving and the ball moving and the offense kind of being more versatile. Jalen Calhoun is going to have that direct of an impact, and that's why I've got to put him at number 2, because I truly think he's going to make a big-time impact on that offense.
Yeah, and I can't argue with that. As I said earlier, the only reason I didn't list him in this top 5 for me is that I'm already kind of taking him for granted. And maybe I shouldn't do that, but I'm already taking him for granted that is in his senior season, a guy who stuck it out through the coaching change, when other guys didn't.
Kudos for that, yeah.
Yeah, and nothing against those other guys. Everybody's got to do what's right for themselves. But Jalen did, and he stuck it out. He's explosive. He's got great hands. I would love to see this year him take that step of leadership. And not that he's not been a leader in his own right, but I'd like to see him take that next step of leadership in that wide receiver room. I believe guys naturally would respect him. Shout out to Jalen, by the way. Just this weekend, he held his first football camp for kids, and so shout out to Jalen for that. But I love it, man. I agree. The quarterback situation at Duke is what it is, and for them to have a guy in that wide receiver room that they know they can count on is going to be super important this year.
Big time. All right, let's get on to number one, our most impactful players for Duke football going into the season. Who you got at number one?
Well, I mean, I took a little bit of liberty here, and we may have the same thing here. I'm not sure. I took a little bit of liberty. You can either call it my number one most impactful player is QB1.
Yeah.
Or my most impactful football player is a toss-up between Riley Leonard and Jordan Moore. Now, I don't know none of us do. Mike Elko and Kevin Johns don't know. So, like, I love it when football fans are, like, tweeting us, like, hey, who's going to be the starting quarterback? We're like, bro, like, they don't know. Like, there's no way we know.
You expect us to know, yeah.
Yeah. But whoever wins that job, and maybe we go to a dual quarterback, situation, which is okay. That's fine with me. But that quarterback position is the most impactful at the end of the day. Kevin Johns, we brought Kevin Johns in because he's an offensive wizard, number one. He's a quarterback coach, number two. If you look in his past, especially most recently at Memphis, you've seen what he's done with quarterbacks. You've seen the way that he will make his offense around a quarterback. That's why I think it's very interesting to see if they name like a legitimate number one, because if they do that, I think that could radically change the way Kevin Johns structures his offense. And so, listen, Riley has things that he is really good at. He throws the ball more accurately. He's a bigger, taller quarterback that can see over the defense a little bit better. He's an underrated runner as well. He's got a little bit of Daniel Jones in him in that sense, that he can really get out there and run if he needs to. But he's more of a power runner. He's more of the guy that's, if it's 4th and 1, you can QB sneak him. He's going to get you that yard. By the way, side note, please QB sneak him and don't throw it. Don't hike the ball back 4 yards when you only need 1. Anyway, but Riley Leonard's that guy. But Jordan Moore. Jordan, I believe, has improved his passing from what we saw during spring practice and even some in the spring game as well. He's improved his passing, but where Jordan Moore gives you just elite level of football is when he's running the ball, and you can't catch him. I mean, he's crazy. He's got some elite level of athleticism. The really neat thing about these two guys, and I mean this legitimately, like we've seen them off camera. Okay, we've seen them interacting like where there's no anything official around. These two guys are like best friends.
Yeah.
Like they get along so well. They legitimately want to push each other to be better football players. And so my number one most impactful player is Riley Leonard and Jordan Moore, QB1, whoever that winds up being for Duke football.
I like QB1, and obviously I think that's the right answer, Josh. Like if a football team wants to be impactful, that's why I kind of took the liberty of putting Charlie Hamm, a kicker, on there at number 5. It's all about scoring points at the end of the day, and I really do think Charlie Hamm's going to be great for this football team. It's also the quarterback spot has just got to be great for Duke to truly move forward. For me, like you're saying, the coaching staff doesn't even know who that guy is going to be right now. How are we supposed to know? And so while I should just end the episode and the conversation right here agreeing with you, saying that it's going to be QB1, I just was like, I what's the name? Who is it going to be? You know what I'm saying?
Right. Fair enough.
That was the internal struggle for me. I don't know who it's going to be.
Just so everybody knows, we did not throw these at each other beforehand. This is so.
Yep, I like it. So for number 1, I want Shaka Heyward just because of the impact that you're going to see. I mentioned he's already been named to Phil Steele's All-ACC team, preseason team, a 3rd team at that linebacker spot. 97 tackles a season ago, led that unit for Duke defensively. I mentioned how much Mike Elko loves his defensive linemen and getting after you. He also loves a thumper at the linebacker spot. And number 42, Shaka Heyward's going to have a huge impact for Duke football this season.
Man, I can't agree more with you. And once again, I think Shaka on the defensive side of the football is kind of the way I was thinking about Jalen Calhoun on the offensive side. I'm almost taking these guys for granted. Yeah, like Shaka's gonna get right at 100 tackles. We know it. He's going to. Now, what is going to be interesting, and I really am interested is how much 4-3 will we see? I know that Coach Elko's scheme is a 4-2-5 scheme. It's a little bit different than what we've been running under David Cutcliffe. But I will be interested to see if I'd love to see Shaka in like that legitimate like middle linebacker role because I believe, man, I think he can flourish there. Because I feel like we've got the horses in the linebacker room, to definitely run a 4-3.
Yeah, that's something that you've talked about this offseason. I mean, in our early conversations when we were talking about strengths and weaknesses and just going kind of position group by position group, you've been the first to say, Josh, that Shaka Heyward is the leader of that group. But going into the season, what is so exciting is that there are several guys in that linebacker room that it's like he should probably get to play some. You got a lot of impact players that are in that room.
You do, and Shaka's the leader of them. And I will say this too. We've gotten to know some of the players personally. Shaka seems to be the lead by example. Like,
right.
I'm gonna do my talking on the field guy, and you need those guys. You've got other guys like DeWayne Carter, Eli Pankau, that have a little bit more of that like outgoing and like type A personality.
Yeah.
Correct. But every football team needs all different types of guys, and Shaka seems to be the guy that's like, you guys can say whatever you want to, do whatever you want to. I'm gonna go out there on the field and I'm gonna have 12 tackles. This game. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. Like he's that kind of guy. And man, I love Shaka. And I believe he will be definitely impactful on this football team. So we took a little bit of a different approach to this. And like I said, man, I mean, I feel bad if Shaka and Jalen happen to hear this. Like, those are my guys. There's so much that I take them for granted. So
That's perfect. Well, that was our 5 most impactful players for the Duke football team going into this upcoming season. A lot of fun. Let us know what you thought. Send us your messages on Twitter. I'm at _JJ_Jackson_ at Joshua Cox at Duke FB Talk. Check out the show at LO_Blue Devils. Josh, it's a pleasure as always to catch up with you here on the program again. I do want people to go support the Section 17 podcast. You guys have a cool episode coming out later this week. But what I want you to do right now is, if people missed our show yesterday where we recap some of the NBA draft, tell us a little bit about what you and I just talked about yesterday.
Yeah, so we talked about Duke and the NBA, man, the NBA draft that happened last week. And this five-player draft that Duke put out there. We talked about the fit for Paulo and Mark as our top 2 draft picks, and then AJ right after him, and then how happy we were for Wendell, and then Trevor. Hey, what do we think about this? The second round, where he landed with the Knicks. And so if you haven't yet, check that out. You need to. We're all about Duke sports, right? I'm a football first guy, but man, historically, I'm a basketball guy. That's just the way it is. And so if you haven't listened earlier this week, make sure you check that out.
Josh, the time is always greatly appreciated. I'm looking forward to seeing you again next week on Locked On Blue Devils, okay?
Absolutely, man. Have a great week, JJ.
That is Josh Cox from Duke Football Talk Section 17 podcast joining us here today on the program. And that's going to do it for our show today. We hope you enjoyed our top 5 impactful players for Duke football in 2022. I'm going to do that same conversation teaser with Josh Cox for the men's basketball team going into next season. That'll be coming up next week. So that's something you can look forward to from me and Josh. So that's going to do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.